Hello students, welcome back to the BSc 3rd Sem Basic English course. In today's video, we will be discussing about the lesson Indian women are never taught how to be alone. In this lesson, the writer aims to revitalize the independent and courageous spirit of the young women. So students, let us now read this very interesting lesson. This lesson, Indian women are never taught how to be alone, is a part of the third unit, Women First. It is written by Kavita Rao and she gives us an insight into the discriminatory upbringing of a girl child in India. Kavita Rao tells us as to how in the year 2012, her husband had to work in a different country due to various reasons such as the higher education of her children and an uncertain job market. He used to visit them once in a few months and this arrangement was supposed to last for a year. But due to unforeseen circumstances, he had to be away from them for many more years. During this period, the author realized that there has been a sharp increase in the number of single women in India, such as unmarried, divorced, widowed, separated, or in long distance relationships. She has found that there are nearly 71 million single women in India, which is a 39% increase over the past decade. Our culture doesn't teach women to be alone. This is reflected most in our movies, which is a true depiction of what goes on in the society. Bollywood's heroines rarely have characters who have a conversation beyond their relationships with men. They are all centered around their relationship with the man in their life. But the movie Queen was revolutionary because the main protagonist, which was played by Kangana Ranaut, preferred to remain alone rather than get married to the hero. Television ads are also a major way of influencing women. Most of the television ads show men purchasing insurance for their cars, while women marketed oils for their husband's health, detergents for their kids' clothes, and chai for the entire family. So, these television ads continue to reinforce the fact that women are always sacrificing their own personal interests and happiness for their family members. Domestic couplehood or a proper domestic family life is emphasized as the only way for a woman to be happy. Kavita Rao comes from a line of women who lived well into their 90s and outlived their husbands by decades. So, there were many women in her family who lived single or alone after the death of their husbands. She gives the example of her own mother, who was 64 when her father had passed away 6 years back. Her mother used to fill her days with gardening, music, family activities, charity, and recently with the internet. Every few months, she used to travel to distant and remote places such as Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh. Her mother turned a tragedy into an opportunity. Kavita Rao tells us that her mother misses her father deeply, but she has continued to live life fully without a companion. The initial stages of being alone were much like the stages of grief. First, there was denial. Kavita Rao refused to accept her dependencies and realized the fact that she had not been taught how to handle her family on her own. Then there was anger and resentment. This then changed to bargaining, then to sadness when she spent most of her time singing Bridget Jones' famous song, All by Myself. Finally, and very painfully, she learned to accept the fact that she had to live alone and take care of her family. At first, the writer realized that she was far more dependent on her husband than she had ever imagined. She knew nothing about car insurance, printer cartridges, or which TV serviceman to call. There was a whole list of chores which she had never bothered to learn. For a year, she was thoroughly distressed and did not know what to do. But by the second year, she and her children began to deal with things. Kavita Rao observes several women who struggle to get cash from a bank, travel alone, or even fill out a check deposit form. She realizes that men and women are taught selective skills and are bound to each other because of shackles called love, family, and culture. Women are found struggling as they come straight from their fathers' homes to their husbands' homes, and they never really know how to live alone and how to be responsible for themselves. Kavita Rao also observes that when we are in our 40s, we find that our friends have less time for us and there is nothing personal about it. Most of them are busy and occupied with their parent teacher meetings, jobs, elderly parents, traffics, doctor's appointments, etc. After seeing all this and understanding it, Kavita Rao learned to enjoy her time with herself. When the writer learned to be alone, other people began to be disconcerted. Many relatives were astonished that she could be happy even though she was away from her husband. Bankers were bemused by the fact that in spite of having a husband, she used to handle her own finances. As she was living with two teenagers, Kavita Rao had to pass weeks without talking to a single adult. She then discovered Twitter and enjoyed the company of people who were wisecracking, cynical, and sarcastic. She found people who tweeted on books, music, food, and travel, which are the only solace of singlehood. Kavita Rao states that she has now begun to enjoy solo eating. She finds pleasure in having a lovely, languorous afternoon meal or watching mid morning movies in completely empty theatres while being alone. There were occasions when she faced problems while staying alone in a budget Delhi hotel. But now she is traveling with pepper spray and a padlock and feels quite safe and comfortable while traveling alone. At many other times, solo, she realizes that traveling alone opens up huge discoveries. Once, while she was traveling alone in Sri Lanka, she found that she was free to do things which her husband would probably have not enjoyed, such as enjoying backstreet, visiting temples, eating dubious and grimy food from the street vendors. So she realizes that there were many hidden pleasures in traveling alone. Kavita Rao realized that time and silence were precious gifts which need to be cherished. She wrote a non-fiction book with a co-author in 6 months in December 2015. She also finished writing a novel in little over 18 months. During this period, she finished reading more than 120 books. She hopes to be back with her husband by next year. But she is grateful to have had this opportunity to learn how to be alone and to overcome it and to love it. She feels that this will help her in future if she ever has to live alone again. She knows that it's not going to be easy, but she also knows that she is going to be perfectly fine if she has to live alone. In the lesson, Indian women are never taught how to be alone. Kavita Rao explains to us the joys of being alone as a single woman. She tells us that it is not at all necessary that women always need to live in a family or with a companion. Women, it is completely acceptable for women to live alone. She also tells us about how women need to acquire various skills so that they are not dependent on anyone. I am sure, students, that after reading this lesson, the independent and courageous spirit which is there in each one of you must have been revived. I am sure that each one of you will now be able to lead an independent life without being dependent on anyone. So, students, I hope you liked this video. Thank you.